"Neil, human," said the alien woman, not knowing that he'd been waiting for this. The vastness of space had never bothered Dale Kincaid. If anything, he found comfort in it, in the endless possibilities, the unclaimed territories, the forgotten corners where civilizations once thrived and left their whispers behind. The border regions where different species fought over imaginary lines drawn across star maps were particularly interesting to him. It was in one such region that the Akari warship Valkora had captured him, seemingly by accident. Or so they thought. The Valkora was a marvel of engineering. Long, sleek, with curves that somehow managed to look both elegant and menacing. The interior matched its exterior, cold, efficient, with lighting that cast everything in a blue-gray tint that reminded Dale of pre-dawn on Earth. The Akari themselves were equally impressive, tall, with silvery skin that seemed to absorb and reflect light, depending on their mood. Their eyes, large and almost entirely black, rarely blinked. Commander Naella Varela stood before him now, her posture impeccable, her uniform adorned with symbols of past victories. She was by any standard intimidating. The other Akari soldiers flanked her, weapons ready, but not quite aimed at him. "Not yet." "Neil, human," Varela commanded, her voice carrying the distinctive metallic undertone of all Akari speech. Dale smiled, a small, almost private smile, and sank to his knees with a flourish that was somewhere between mockery and deference. "As you wish, Commander." The ease with which he complied seemed to unsettle her. Her eyes narrowed slightly, the Akari equivalent of a frown. "Search him," she ordered. 2 soldiers approached, their movements precise as they patted him down, removing a few small devices from his pockets, along with a worn leather wallet and what appeared to be a harmless data tablet. "Just some reading material for the journey," Dale offered helpfully. "The newest Galactic Standards bestseller. Not very good, if I'm honest." One of the soldiers handed the tablet to Varela, who barely glanced at it before passing it to another officer standing slightly behind her. "Take this to the analysis chamber. I want a full-spectrum scan." "Yes, Commander." Varela refocused on Dale, who was still kneeling, still smiling that infuriating smile. "You were found in a restricted sector. No human ships are registered in this quadrant. Explain your presence." "Would you believe I got lost?" "No." "Fair enough." Dale shrugged. "It's a complicated story involving a malfunctioning navigation system, a rather persistent ion storm, and a very misleading advertisement for the galaxy's best noodles that promised the restaurant was just one jump away." An Akari soldier behind Varela shifted uncomfortably. "Commander, this sector has been monitored since the Cygni conflict. The human's presence coincides with the signal anomalies we've been tracking." Dale's eyes flickered with interest at the mention of signals, but he quickly hid it behind another casual smile. Varela nodded, almost imperceptibly. "Take him to holding cell 6. I'll interrogate him personally once we've analyzed his possessions." As 2 soldiers grabbed Dale's arms to hoist him up, he spoke again, his voice suddenly carrying a weight it hadn't before. "You know, Commander, sometimes the universe calls to us. Some of us just have the good sense to answer." Varela paused, her head tilting slightly. "And what call did you answer, human?" Dale's smile widened. "The interesting one." The commander stared at him for a long moment before turning away. "Cell 6. Now." As they led him away, Dale maintained his relaxed demeanor, nodding appreciatively at the ship's interior design, occasionally asking questions about the Valkora's propulsion system that went deliberately unanswered. The holding cell, they finally pushed him into, was small but clean, with a simple cot and a transparent force field serving as a door. "Any chance of room service?" Dale called after the departing guards. "I wouldn't say no to a coffee. Or a blanket. It's a bit chilly in here." The guards ignored him, their footsteps echoing down the corridor until silence fell. Only then did Dale's smile fade slightly. He sat on a cot, leaned back against the wall, and closed his eyes as if listening for something only he could hear. In the command center of the Valkora, Varela stared at the readouts from Dale's confiscated tablet. The analysis was showing unusual energy signatures, traces of an ancient encoding matrix that didn't match any known human technology. Commander, her second-in-command spoke softly. The energy fluctuation we detected earlier, it's intensified. And, he hesitated, it matches the frequency pattern from the human's device. Varella's silver skin shimmed slightly, a sign of agitation among her species. Bring up the historical records of the spiral wing symbol, she ordered, and prepare the interrogation chamber. I want to know exactly what our human prisoner is doing in this part of space. Yes, Commander. The officer paused. Do you think he could be connected to the ancient signals we've been tracking? Varella's black eyes reflected the blue glow of the ship's consoles. I think, she said slowly, that our guest is either a fool who stumbled into something far beyond his understanding, or he knows exactly what he's doing. And I'm not certain which possibility concerns me more. The interrogation chamber of the Valcora was designed to intimidate. Unlike the holding cells, which were merely functional, this room had been crafted with psychological warfare in mind. The lighting was harsh, the temperature was kept uncomfortably low, and the chair in the center, where prisoners were secured, was positioned to make them feel small and exposed. None of this seemed to bother Dale Kincaid. Love what you've done with the place, he commented as the guard secured his restraints. Very minimalist. The chair could use a cushion, though. Don't judge my spine, but Earth bodies weren't designed for military-grade seating. Varela entered shortly after, dismissing the guards with a simple gesture. She carried a small device in her hand, Dale's tablet, he noted, and set on a console before approaching him. Mr. Kincaid, she began, pronouncing his surname with careful precision. You've been reading my file. I am Dutched. You don't have a file, Varela countered. At least, not one that matches any human in our database. Your identification claims you are Dale Kincaid, age 34, occupation, freelance consultant. Yet there is no record of you in any known registry. Dale smiled. I prefer to keep a low profile. That would be difficult, considering humans are one of the most documented species in the galaxy. Your governments track your citizens obsessively. Maybe I'm not a big fan of paperwork. Varela's patience was visibly thinning. She activated a console, bringing up a holographic display of various waveforms and patterns. These energy signatures were detected in your possession. They match anomalies we've been tracking across 3 systems. Explain. Dale studied the display for a moment, his expression thoughtful. Would you believe I have no idea what those are? No. Again, fair enough. He shifted slightly, the restraints clinking. Any chance of that coffee I mentioned earlier? It's been a long day of being captured and interrogated. Varela stepped closer, her tall frame looming over him. You're either remarkably brave or remarkably foolish. This isn't a game, human. The signals you're carrying, they're connected to something ancient, something powerful, something my people have been searching for. For the first time, Dale's smile faltered. And what exactly are your people searching for, Commander Varela? She didn't answer immediately, instead circling his chair slowly. You claim you were lost, yet your navigation data shows deliberate course corrections toward the exact coordinates where we've detected the strongest signal patterns. Coincidence. The Akari don't believe in coincidences. Dale sighed. Look, if I tell you what I know, which isn't much, will you at least consider that I might not be your enemy here? Varela stopped in front of him, her black eyes unreadable. Proceed. About 6 months ago, I was salvaging near an abandoned satellite platform in the Taurus Drift. Nothing illegal, he added quickly. The platform had been decommissioned decades ago. I was looking for old tech parts to sell to collectors. Continue. I found something else instead. A data packet, hidden in a subsystem that should have been long dead. It contained, well, I'm not even sure what to call it. A message? A map? It had this symbol. He nodded toward the tablet on the console. A spiral with wings. And it felt, I know this sounds crazy, but it felt like it was waiting for someone to find it. Varela's expression didn't change, but something in her posture shifted. This data packet, what did it contain specifically? Dale hesitated. Coordinates. Fragments of code I couldn't decipher. And a kind of pull, like it wanted me to follow it. A pull, Varela repeated flatly. I told you it would sound crazy. And so you, a single human in a small craft, decided to follow unknown coordinates into disputed territory, risking death or capture because you felt a pull. Dale grinned. When you say it like that, it does sound a bit reckless. It sounds insane. Possibly. But here's the thing, Commander. Your people are out here looking for the same thing, aren't they? These signals, this symbol, the spiral with wings. It means something to the Akari. Varela was silent for a long moment. Then she turned away, accessing another console. The symbol you describe has appeared in ruins at the edges of known space. Ancient sites predating all current civilizations. My ancestors found references to it in the earliest of our records, a relic of a time before our history began. She brought up a new holographic display, this one showing various archaeological sites, star maps, and what appear to be fragments of writing in an unknown language. For generations, we believed these were simply religious artifacts, remnants of primitive belief systems. But recently, we've detected active energy signatures matching the patterns in these ruins. Active? Dale leaned forward as much as his restraints would allow. You're saying these ancient sites are powering up? In a manner of speaking, Varela closed the display. What we don't understand is why a human would be receiving these signals, or how you managed to decrypt even a portion of them. Dale shrugged, the gesture awkward in his restraints. Maybe the universe has a sense of humor. Before Varela could respond, her communication device chimed. She stepped away, speaking quietly into it, her back to Dale. When she turned around again, her expression had changed. It seems your pull is more tangible than I thought. We've detected an energy surge matching the signature from your tablet. It's coming from a structure drifting in the nebula just beyond our current position. Dale's eyes lit up. See? Not so crazy after all. Varela studied him for a moment longer, then made a decision. The restraints will be removed, but you will remain under guard at all times. If this is some kind of trap. It's not a trap, Dale said, his usual humor giving way to earnestness. I'm just as curious as you are about what's out there. Varela signaled the guards to release him. Curiosity can be dangerous, Mr. Kincaid. Dale rubbed his wrists as the restraints came off. The best things usually are. The command center of the Valcora hummed with activity as Varela and Dale entered. Officers moved between stations, voices kept professionally low despite the obvious tension in the air. Several of them cast suspicious glances at Dale, clearly uncomfortable with a human prisoner being brought into their sacred space. Commander, one officer approached, deliberately positioning himself between Varela and Dale. The energy signature has stabilized. We've pinpointed its source to an object approximately 12,000 kilometers from our position. Show me, Varela ordered. The main view screen activated, displaying a magnified image of what appeared to be a structure floating against the backdrop of a swirling nebula. It was unlike any ship or station Dale had ever seen. Part crystalline, part metallic, with organic-looking curves that seemed to flow into each other. Its surface was etched with symbols, some of which Dale recognized from the data packet he'd found. That's it, he breathed, taking an involuntary step forward. Several officers tensed, hands moving toward weapons, but Varela held up a hand to stop them. You recognize this structure? Not exactly, Dale admitted. But those symbols, they match what I found. And that feeling, that pull I mentioned, it's stronger now. Varela studied the screen, her expression unreadable. Scans show minimal energy output, but stable. No life signs detected. The structure appears to be in a dormant state, but still functional. So what's the plan? Dale asked. Please tell me the plan involves going over there. That would be extremely risky, one of the officers cut in. The structure could be a weapon, a trap, or contaminated with unknown pathogens. And bringing the human along would be necessary, Varela interrupted. If these signals were specifically transmitted to him, his presence may be required to understand their purpose. The officer looked startled. Commander, with all due respect, protocol dictates. I am well aware of protocol, Lieutenant Krev, Varela said coldly. I'm also aware that we are facing an unprecedented situation. Prepare a shuttle and a security team. We depart in 30 minutes. As the officers dispersed to carry out her orders, Varela turned to Dale. You will be equipped with a standard environment suit. You will follow every instruction without question. If at any point I determine you are a threat to my crew or my mission, I will not hesitate to eliminate that threat. Is that clear? Dale nodded, his usual smile subdued but still present. Crystal clear, Commander. And may I say, I appreciate your open-minded approach to interspecies cooperation. This is not cooperation, Mr. Kincaid. This is controlled observation of a potentially valuable asset. I've been called worse. Dale glanced back at the screen, at the mysterious structure waiting in the darkness. So, any ideas on what we might find in there? Varela's black eyes reflected the strange, ancient form on the screen. If we're fortunate, answers. If not, she let the thought hang unfinished as she strode away. To prepare for the mission. The shuttle bay of the Valkyra was a model of efficiency, like everything else on the Akari vessel. Sleek craft lined the walls, each one designed for specific mission parameters. The one they would be taking was mid-sized, built for both speed and defense. Dale watched as Akari crew members performed final checks, their movements precise and coordinated. He had been fitted with an environment suit that was obviously designed for Akari physiology. It was too tall in the torso and too narrow in the shoulders, but the adaptive materials had conformed enough to be functional. This brings back memories, he commented to no one in particular. My first school dance. The suit didn't fit then either. Lieutenant Krev, who would be leading the security team, gave him a cold look. This is not an excursion for your amusement, human. Keep your observations relevant to the mission. Humor is my way of staying calm, Lieutenant. Would you prefer I panic instead? Before Krev could respond, Varela entered the bay. She had changed into what Dale assumed was the Akari equivalent of field armor, sleeker than the standard uniform, with additional protective elements at key joints and vital areas. Status report, she demanded. All systems nominal. Commander, the pilot responded. Course plotted and cleared. Estimated arrival at the structure, 17 minutes. Security protocols? Full spectrum scanners active, Krev replied. Weapons charged, but safed. Containment fields prepared for any artifacts we may retrieve. Varela nodded. And our guest? Dale gave a mock salute. Suited up and ready for adventure, Commander. Her expression didn't change, but she held his gaze for a moment longer than necessary before turning to the shuttle. Boarding procedures commence now. Remember, we are observers first. No aggressive actions unless directly threatened. The interior of the shuttle was cramped but functional. Dale was seated between two security officers, neither of whom seemed inclined to conversation. Across from him, Varela studied a data pad, occasionally swiping through what appeared to be historical records of the spiral wing symbol. As the shuttle detached from the Valkyra and began its journey toward the mysterious structure, Dale leaned forward slightly. You know, Commander, I've been wondering, why is this symbol so important to the Akari? Varela didn't look up from her data pad. That's classified information. Of course it is. Dale settled back in his seat. But considering I'm currently helping you investigate an ancient, potentially dangerous structure that's somehow connected to me specifically, maybe a little information sharing wouldn't hurt? After a moment, Varela set down the pad. The symbol you call spiral wing appears in our earliest historical records. It is associated with what we call the precursors, a civilization that existed before any current species had achieved interstellar travel. How long ago are we talking? At minimum, 50,000 years. Possibly much longer. Dale whistled softly. And what happened to them? Unknown. They simply vanished. Left behind ruins, artifacts, fragments of their technology, but no clear explanation for their disappearance. And now their tech is suddenly becoming active again, Dale mused. Just when galactic tensions are at their highest in centuries. Interesting timing. Varela's eyes narrowed. What do you know about galactic tensions, Mr. Kincaid? I read the news. The Akari Dominion, the Human Alliance, the Cygni Confederation, all posturing, all expanding their borders, all convinced they're entitled to more territory. He shrugged. Tale as old as time, just with fancier weapons. Your understanding lacks nuance. Probably. But I'm guessing these precursors were beyond that kind of squabbling, weren't they? Advanced enough to leave behind tech that still works after 50,000 years? They must have figured out something we haven't. Before Varela could respond, the pilot's voice came over the comm system. Commander, we're approaching the structure. Initial scans confirm no defensive systems active, but we're detecting an increase in energy output as we near. It knows we're coming, Dale said softly. Varela gave him a sharp look. That's an unfounded assumption. Is it? The energy output increases as we get closer. Sounds like a response to me. We don't know that the structure is sentient or automated in that way. Fair point, Dale conceded. But I'd bet my last credit that it's not a coincidence. The shuttle slowed as they approached the structure, which loomed larger in the viewports. Up close, its alien nature was even more apparent. The surface had a subtle iridescence, shifting colors that seemed to respond to the light from the shuttle's external lamps. Remarkable, one of the science officers murmured. The material properties don't match any known substance in our database. Can we dock with it? Varela asked. The pilot studied his instruments. There appears to be an opening on the far side that could accommodate our shuttle. It's not a standard docking port, but the dimensions are sufficient. Proceed, but maintain distance thrusters at ready. Be prepared to withdraw immediately if anything changes. As the shuttle maneuvered around the structure, Dale found himself holding his breath. The feeling he had described to Varela, that inexplicable pull, was stronger now, a humming sense of anticipation that seemed to vibrate through his bones. The opening the pilot had identified came into view, a perfect circle in the side of the structure, edged with the same symbols that had been in the data packet Dale found. As the shuttle's lights illuminated the interior, they could see a chamber beyond, large enough to hold their craft with room to spare. That's convenient, Krev said suspiciously. Or, by design, Dale countered. Maybe it's meant to be visited. Scan the chamber, Varela ordered. Full spectrum analysis. After a tense moment, the science officer reported, no detectable hazards, Commander. Atmosphere is thin, but not vacuum. Temperature is within tolerable ranges. Gravity appears to be approximately 0.8 standard. Varela made her decision. Take us in. Slow approach. Be ready to reverse thrust at my command. The shuttle edged forward into the opening, which was indeed a perfect fit for their craft. As they passed through, subtle lights began to activate along the walls of the chamber, creating a soft, ambient glow. It's responding to our presence, the science officer confirmed, excitement breaking through her professional tone. Energy readings are increasing, but in a controlled pattern. The shuttle settled onto the floor of the chamber, which seemed to subtly adapt to support their weight. Varela stood, addressing the team. Standard exploration protocols. Security forms a perimeter. Science team conducts initial analysis. No one touches anything without explicit authorization. She turned to Dale. You will remain with me at all times. Wouldn't dream of being anywhere else, Dale assured her. As the airlock cycled and the team prepared to exit the shuttle, Dale felt his heart racing with a mixture of fear and exhilaration. Whatever waited beyond that door had called to him across light years of space, had drawn him to this specific place at this specific time. And he had a feeling that his journey was just beginning. The interior of the precursor structure defied conventional architectural logic. Corridors curved and merged in patterns that seemed organic rather than designed, yet there was an undeniable mathematical precision to everything. The walls themselves emitted a soft, ambient light that shifted in hue as they moved through the space, sometimes responding to their proximity in ways that suggested awareness. It's like it's breathing, Dale whispered, reaching out a hand toward one wall where symbols similar to the spiral wing pulsed with gentle illumination. Do not touch anything, Varela reminded him sharply. Dale pulled his hand back, but his eyes remained fixed on the symbols. They're the same as what I found in the data packet, but there are more of them now. It's like parts of a sentence or a code. The science officer, who had been scanning the walls, nodded. These patterns have syntactical structure consistent with a language, but it doesn't match any known linguistic database. Can we record all of this? Varela asked. I want a complete map of these symbols throughout the structure. Already in progress, Commander. They continued deeper into the structure, the security team maintaining a protective formation around the scientists and their equipment. Dale noticed that the spiral wing symbol appeared with increasing frequency as they progressed, often at junctions or entrances to new chambers. It's a waypoint system, he realized aloud. The symbols are guiding us somewhere. Varela studied him thoughtfully. Why do you believe that? Look at the pattern. Each time we reach a choice of direction, the spiral wing appears, always oriented toward one particular path. The commander considered this, then nodded. We'll follow the symbols, but maintain alert status, she added to the security team. This could still be leading us into a trap. The path led them to a large, circular chamber at what felt like the heart of the structure. Unlike the corridors, which had been relatively empty, this room contained what appeared to be equipment, consoles or interfaces of some kind, arranged in a pattern around a central platform. This is incredible, one of the scientists breathed, moving toward the nearest console. The technology is unlike anything we've encountered, yet there's a logical structure to it that suggests. Without warning, the entire chamber illuminated, light pulsing through the floor and walls in patterns that mimicked neural pathways. The central platform began to glow, and from it rose a holographic display, or something that resembled one, though the technology was clearly far advanced beyond current holographic capabilities. The display showed a three-dimensional representation of the galaxy, rotating slowly, with certain points highlighted with pulsing lights. Those are the locations where we've detected similar energy signatures, Varela realized, stepping closer to the display. This is a map of what? Structures like this one. Beacons, Dale said softly. They're beacons. As if in response to his voice, the holographic display shifted, zooming in on one of the highlighted points, the very location where they now stood. Symbols began to flow around the image, moving too quickly for any of them to process. Can we slow this down? Varela demanded. Translate it. The science officer was frantically adjusting her equipment. I'm trying, Commander, but the data flow is overwhelming our systems. Suddenly, the flow of symbols stopped, and a single sequence appeared, hovering in the air before them. At its center was the spiral wing, but now it was surrounded by additional markings that formed a complex pattern. It's waiting, Dale said, taking a step toward the hologram. Waiting for what? Krev asked suspiciously. For someone to respond. To complete the pattern, I think. Before anyone could stop him, Dale reached out toward the holographic display. As his fingers approached the symbols, a beam of light shot out from the platform, scanning him from head to toe. The security team immediately raised their weapons, but Varela held up a hand. Hold! Don't fire! The scanning beam withdrew, and the holographic display changed again. Now it showed a representation of Dale, a perfect three-dimensional model of his body, rotating slowly, with certain points highlighted in the same way the galactic map had been. What is this? Varela demanded, moving to stand beside Dale. What is it doing? I think, Dale said slowly, it's confirming something. About me, specifically. The hologram of Dale was replaced by a double helix structure, clearly DNA, but with certain sections illuminated. Beside it appeared a similar structure, but with notable differences. It's comparing genetic codes, the science officer realized. One is human, presumably Mr. Kincaid's. The other is not human, Varela finished. Is it Akari? The officer shook her head. No, Commander. It doesn't match any known species in our database. Dale stared at the display, his usual humor replaced by a look of genuine wonder. It's them, isn't it? The precursors. It's comparing my DNA to theirs. Before anyone could respond, the chamber trembled slightly, and the light patterns in the floor intensified. The holographic display shifted again, now showing a sequence of star systems, with a path highlighted between them. It's a route, Varela said, to the other beacons. Not just a route, the science officer corrected, studying her scanner. It's transmitting actual navigational data to our systems. Coordinates, stellar conditions, optimal approach vectors. Dale turned to Varela, his expression serious for once. It wants us to follow the path, to find the others. Why? Krev demanded. What's the purpose of these beacons? I don't know, Dale admitted, but I think each one contains part of the answer. This is just the first step. Varela was studying the holographic route with intense concentration. These coordinates take us beyond established territories, into uncharted space. Of course they do, Dale said with a hint of his old smile. The best adventures always do. The commander's communication device chimed insistently. She activated it with a touch. Varela here. Commander, came a tense voice, her second-in-command aboard the Valkyra. We've received an emergency transmission from High Command. High Emissary Olivan has personally issued orders for your immediate return to Dominion space. The transmission specifically mentions the human prisoner and demands his transfer to a military tribunal. The atmosphere in the chamber chilled instantly. Varela's expression hardened. Acknowledged. Inform the Valkyra we will be returning to the ship shortly. She ended the communication and turned to her team. Download all data we've collected. We depart in 10 minutes. Dale watched her carefully. So that's it? We just leave? When we've barely scratched the surface of what this place has to offer. We have our orders, Mr. Kincaid. Orders that conveniently arrived just as we discovered something extraordinary. Dale stepped closer to her, lowering his voice. You can't tell me you're not curious about what lies along that path, about what the other beacons contain. Varela's black eyes met his. My curiosity is irrelevant. I serve the Dominion. Even when the Dominion might be missing the opportunity of a millennium. These beacons have been waiting for 50,000 years, Commander. What's the rush now? For a moment, something flickered in Varela's expression. Doubt, perhaps, or the conflict between duty and discovery. But she quickly masked it. Prepare to return to the shuttle. That's an order. As the team began to pack up their equipment, Dale noticed that the holographic display was still active, still showing the route between beacons. He stepped closer to it, studying the path, committing as much of it to memory as he could. Just before they left the chamber, he turned back for one last look. The spiral wing symbol pulsed once, brightly, as if in farewell or in promise. The shuttle ride back to the Valkyra was tense and silent. Dale could sense the shift in the atmosphere, the excitement of discovery now overshadowed by the unexpected orders from High Command. He noticed the scientists exchanging concerned glances, their data pads clutched protectively, as if they feared their findings might be confiscated. Varela sat apart from the others, her posture rigid, her expression unreadable. Once she caught Dale watching her and held his gaze for a long moment before looking away. When they docked with the Valkyra, they were met by a contingent of officers led by Varela's second-in-command, Tavok. His expression was grave. Commander, he said formally, High Emissary Olivan is waiting to speak with you via secure channel. He has ordered that the human be placed in maximum security confinement until further notice. Varela nodded stiffly. See to it, Tavok. I'll take the communication in my private quarters. As two security officers moved to take Dale's arms, he spoke up. Commander, before you go, may I have a word? In private. Varela hesitated, then nodded. 1 minute. The rest of you dismissed. When they were alone in a small alcove off the shuttle bay, Dale spoke quietly but urgently. You know what's happening here, don't you? Someone in your hierarchy has figured out what we've found, and they want to control it. You don't understand the complexities of Akari governance, Mr. Kincaid. I understand power grabs when I see them. This High Emissary, he's not interested in scientific discovery, is he? He wants the beacons for something else. Varela's silver skin shimmed subtly. That sign of agitation again. Olivan is the voice of the ruling council. His authority is absolute, and yet he's afraid of what a human prisoner and a mid-level commander might have discovered. Dale shook his head. Think about it, Varela. Why the urgency? Why demand my transfer to a tribunal instead of simply ordering you to continue the investigation under closer supervision? Before she could respond, their minute was up. Tuvok approached, security officers at his side. Commander, the emissary is growing impatient. Varela straightened. Take Mr. Kincaid to the high-security wing, but treat him with respect. He is still a valuable source of information. Dale allowed himself to be led away, but called over his shoulder. The beacons chose to respond to me, Commander. Ask yourself why that might be and what Olivan plans to do about it. In her private quarters, Varela stood before the communication terminal, steeling herself for the conversation to come. When she activated the channel, the stern face of High Emissary Olivan filled the screen, his silver skin darker and more mottled than hers, a sign of advanced age among the Akari. Commander Varela, he began without preamble, I understand you've made contact with one of the artifacts. Yes, Emissary. We discovered a structure that appears to be of precursor origin, containing advanced technology and information about similar structures throughout the galaxy. And the human? What is his connection to this? Varela chose her words carefully. The structure appeared to recognize something in his genetic makeup. It responded to him in ways it did not respond to us. Olivan's expression darkened. This is troubling news, Commander. Humans have no right to precursor technology. It is the heritage of the Akari alone. With respect, Emissary, the evidence suggests the precursors may have had contact with early humans, or perhaps even influenced their development in some way. Speculation, Olivan dismissed. What matters is control of these artifacts. You will return to Dominion space immediately. The human will be transferred to a special research facility where his connection to the artifacts can be thoroughly examined. Varela felt a chill at his words. Examined in what way, Emissary? That is not your concern, Commander. Olivan's tone hardened. Your duty is to obey. The data you've collected will be analyzed by our highest-level scientists. Your crew will be debriefed and reassigned. There is still much we don't understand about the beacon. Varela argued. My team has established a rapport with the technology. Continuing our investigation would be the most efficient. Your judgment has been compromised, Olivan interrupted. First, you allow a human prisoner unusual freedoms. Then you personally lead a mission into an unknown structure without proper authorization. These are not the actions of a commander with the Dominion's best interests at heart. Varela stiffened. My record speaks for itself, Emissary. I have served the Dominion faithfully for 27 cycles. Then prove that loyalty now. Return to designated coordinates immediately. I have dispatched 3 warships to escort you and secure the human. Olivan leaned closer to the screen, his voice lowering. Be warned, Commander. If you deviate from these orders, you will be considered in violation of the High Command's directive. The consequences would be severe. The communication ended abruptly, leaving Varela staring at a blank screen. For several minutes, she stood motionless, her mind racing through implications, consequences, possibilities. When she finally moved, it was with purpose. She accessed her private terminal, bypassing the standard communication protocols to send encrypted messages to select members of her crew. Those she trusted most, those whose loyalty was to science and discovery rather than political maneuvering. Then she made her way to the high-security wing where Dale was being held. The guard saluted as she approached. Commander on deck. Leave us, she ordered. Seal the corridor, but deactivate monitoring in this section. Security override Varela 97 Alpha. The guards exchanged uncertain glances, but her command codes were absolute. They retreated, the heavy doors sliding shut behind them. Dale sat on the edge of the cell's narrow bed, watching her with interest. The force field between them hummed softly, casting a faint blue tinge over his features. Let me guess, he said. The conversation with the big boss didn't go well. Varela deactivated the force field with a touch to the control panel. You were right. Olivan has no interest in scientific discovery. He wants the beacon technology as a weapon, a means to solidify Akari dominance. Dale stood, surprised by her candor and the deactivation of his cell. And you disagree with that approach? The precursors left these beacons for a reason. If they had wanted them used as weapons, they would have made them weapons. She paced the small space outside his cell. Olivan has sent warships to intercept us. When they arrive, you will be taken to a facility where your connection to the beacons will be studied. Invasively, I suspect. That sounds unpleasant. Dale's usual humor was subdued. What do you plan to do about it? Varela stopped pacing and faced him directly. What would you do if you found something that could change everything you thought you knew about your history, your place in the universe? Would you hand it over to those who would use it for dominance rather than understanding? I think you already know my answer to that, Dale said quietly. But the real question is, what are you willing to risk, Commander? Varela's hand moved to the emblem on her uniform, the symbol of her rank, of her decades of loyal service. My ship, my career, possibly my life. For what? For a human stranger and a mysterious alien beacon. For the truth, she replied simply. For the knowledge the precursors meant us to find. Dale studied her for a long moment, then smiled, not his usual sardonic grin, but something more genuine. Well then, Commander Varela, I believe we've just become co-conspirators in the greatest treasure hunt in galactic history. This is not a hunt for treasure, she corrected severely. It is a scientific expedition of the highest importance. Of course, Dale agreed, though his eyes still twinkled. Purely scientific. Nothing exciting about ancient alien technology and mysterious genetic connections at all. Despite herself, Varela felt her rigid posture soften slightly. We have limited time. Olivan's ships will reach us within 12 hours. By then, we need to be gone. Gone where? To the next beacon. She produced a small data device. My scientists have decrypted enough of the navigational data to plot a course. But we'll need to move quickly, and not everyone on this ship will agree with my decision. A mutiny, Dale said, his tone somewhere between awe and amusement. I never thought I'd see the day when an Akari commander would go rogue. Not a mutiny, Varela corrected sharply. A redirection of mission parameters. Call it whatever helps you sleep at night, Commander. I'm in. In the command center of the Valkora, Lieutenant Krev stood rigidly at attention, his expression a mixture of disbelief and betrayal. Commander, what you're proposing is treason against the Dominion. Varela faced him and the other senior officers she had summoned. I am proposing that we continue our scientific mission, as we were originally tasked to do. The High Emissary's orders contradict the very purpose of the Valkora's deployment. The emissary speaks with the authority of the ruling council, another officer argued. We are bound by oath to obey. We are bound by oath to pursue knowledge for the betterment of the Akari, Varela countered. What Olivan intends is not betterment. It is dominance at any cost. Dale, who had been instructed to remain silent during this meeting, couldn't help but admire Varela's strategy. She wasn't appealing to emotion or personal loyalty, but to the core values of the scientific mission that these officers had dedicated their lives to. The beacons contain knowledge that has waited 50,000 years to be discovered, she continued. Knowledge that was meant to be found by those ready to understand it, not to weaponize it. I believe the precursors chose their messengers carefully. She glanced briefly at Dale before returning her attention to her officers. I intend to follow the path they have laid out. Those who wish to join me are welcome. Those who do not may take the escape pods to the nearest Akari outpost. A heavy silence fell over the command center. Then, slowly, the science officer who had accompanied them to the beacon stepped forward. The commander is right. What we found in that structure, it wasn't a weapon or a strategic asset. It was an invitation, a call to those curious enough to answer. She moved to stand beside Varela. I will follow this path, wherever it leads. One by one, other officers joined them. Not all, but enough. Krev remained where he was, his expression hardening. You are making a grave mistake, Commander. One that will cost you everything you've worked for. Perhaps, Varela acknowledged. But some discoveries are worth the cost. Krev turned to the officers who had remained loyal to the Dominion's orders. Secure the armory. Lock down the engine room. We will not allow this ship to be stolen by traitors. That's not going to happen, Lieutenant, Varela said calmly, and nodded to one of her loyal officers, who activated a control sequence on the main console. Throughout the ship, security bulkheads slammed into place, separating sections of the Valkora according to a prearranged plan. The command center itself was now isolated from the rest of the vessel. "I've already secured the critical systems," Varela explained. "The armory is locked down, but under my control. The engine room is staffed only by those who support our mission. You and those who wish to remain loyal to Olivan will be given safe passage off the Valkora via escape pods." Krev's hand moved toward his sidearm, but he found himself suddenly surrounded by officers loyal to Varela, their own weapons already drawn. "Don't make this more difficult than it needs to be, Krev," Varela said softly. "No one needs to die today." For a tense moment, it seemed the lieutenant might choose violence. Then, with a visible effort, he relaxed his posture. "You've planned this well, Commander, but you cannot run forever. The Dominion will find you." "Probably," she agreed. "But by then, I hope to have answers worth the chase." As Krev and the other dissenting officers were escorted to the escape pods, Dale approached Varela. "That was impressively bloodless." "The Akari value order and precision," she replied, "even in rebellion." "So what's our next move, Captain Rebel?" Varela ignored the nickname. "We have the coordinates for the next beacon. Once the escape pods are away, we'll set course immediately. Olivan's ships will be looking for us along standard routes, so we'll need to take a more unconventional path. Through the Scylla Rift," Dale suggested, studying the star chart displayed on the main view screen. Varela looked at him in surprise. "How did you know that was an option?" "I may not have mentioned that smuggling was occasionally part of my freelance consultant work," Dale admitted with a grin. "The rift is treacherous, but if you know the currents, it's the perfect place to disappear for a while." "And you know these currents?" "Let's just say I've made that run a few times with cargo that preferred to avoid official inspection." Varela studied him for a moment. "It seems you continue to be full of surprises, Mr. Kincaid. Call me Dale. I think we're well past formalities at this point." "Very well, Dale." The name felt strange on her tongue. "Once the dissenters are away, you will guide us through this rift to the coordinates of the second beacon." Dale gave a mock salute. "Aye, Commander. One smuggler's route coming up." As they prepared to set course for the Scylla Rift, Varela received confirmation that all escape pods had successfully launched. On the view screen, the small crafts could be seen accelerating away from the Valkora, their distress. "Beacons already active. They'll be picked up within hours," one of the officers noted, "and they'll report everything." "Which is why we need to be well away by then," Varela responded. "Set course for the rift entrance. Maximum speed." The Valkora's engines hummed to life, pushing the warship forward with smooth, powerful acceleration. As the stars on the view screen began to blur with their increasing velocity, Dale found himself standing beside Varela on the command platform. "For what it's worth," he said quietly, "I think you made the right choice." "It wasn't a choice," she replied, her eyes fixed on the path ahead. "It was the only possible response to what we discovered. The beacons are too important to become merely another weapon in an endless cycle of conflict. And what do you think they are instead? What could be worth risking everything?" Varela turned to him, her black eyes reflecting the starlight from the view screen. "Knowledge, understanding, perhaps even a way forward that doesn't involve dominance and submission." She paused. "After all, when we first met, I ordered you to kneel. Yet here we stand as equals, united by curiosity rather than divided by hierarchy." Dale smiled at the memory. "I did kneel rather gracefully, though, didn't I?" "You did," she acknowledged, a hint of humor in her voice. "Almost as if you'd been waiting for the opportunity." "Maybe I just knew it wasn't the end of the story," Dale suggested. "Just the beginning." As the Valkora accelerated toward the swirling, dangerous beauty of the Scylla Rift, Varela thought that perhaps he was right. The order to kneel had been just the first word in a conversation that was proving to be far more complex and far more important than she could have imagined. And somewhere ahead, beyond the rift, the next beacon waited. Another chapter in a story 50,000 years in the making. The Scylla Rift lived up to its treacherous reputation. From a distance, it appeared as a twisting ribbon of iridescent gases and dust clouds, shot through with veins of energy that pulsed like living things. Up close, it revealed itself to be a chaotic maelstrom of gravitational anomalies, radiation pockets, and unpredictable energy discharges. Dale stood at the navigation console, his usual flippant demeanor replaced by intense concentration. "Adjust heading by 3 degrees port," he instructed. "There's a current here that will carry us through the next section if we catch it just right." The Akari navigator, initially skeptical of taking orders from a human, now followed Dale's instructions without hesitation. The Valcora responded, banking gracefully into what appeared to be a particularly dense cluster of dust. "Are you certain about this?" Varela asked, watching as the visibility on their forward sensors dropped to nearly zero. "Our scanners can barely penetrate this section." "That's the point," Dale replied, not taking his eyes off the navigational display. "The dust contains trace elements that scatter sensor signals. It's why this route works so well for those of us who prefer to fly under the radar." As if to prove his point, the Valcora emerged from the dust cloud into a relatively clear channel, a twisting corridor of calm within the chaos of the rift. "Remarkable," the navigator murmured. "This pathway doesn't appear on any of our charts. And it won't stay stable for long," Dale warned. "These currents shift every few weeks. It's why the official maps are useless here." Varela moved to stand beside him, studying the route he had plotted through the rift. "How much further until we're clear?" "Another 6 hours, assuming the path holds." Dale glanced at her. "Your ship is handling it better than I expected. Military vessels aren't usually built for this kind of precision maneuvering. The Valcora is a scientific exploration vessel first, a warship second," Varela explained. "Unlike most Dominion ships, she was designed for versatility rather than brute force." "Lucky for us," Dale mused. "Though I'm guessing those warships Olivan sent won't have the same advantage." "They would not dare follow us into the rift," Varela said confidently. "Dominion battlecruisers are too massive, too unwieldy for these conditions. So we have a head start, at least until we emerge on the other side." Varela nodded. "By which time we should be able to reach the coordinates of the second beacon before they can intercept us." Dale was about to respond when an alarm sounded from one of the sensor stations. The science officer monitoring it looked up with concern. "Commander, I'm detecting an unusual energy signature ahead. It's similar to the readings we obtained from the first beacon, but stronger, much stronger." Varela moved quickly to the station, examining the readings herself. "Is it the second beacon? Could our coordinates be incorrect?" "I don't think so," the officer replied. "The signature is different. Somehow, less structured, more raw." Dale joined them, peering at the scanner display. "Where exactly is it coming from?" "Directly in our path, approximately 2 light minutes ahead. It appears to be emanating from a cluster of asteroids at the edge of the rift." Varela straightened, her decision already made. "Adjust course to investigate. Full sensor sweep when we're in range." As the Valcora altered its trajectory slightly, Dale gave Varela a questioning look. "I thought the plan was to get through the rift as quickly as possible." "The plan is to follow where the beacons lead us," she corrected. "If there is precursor technology in that asteroid cluster, we need to know about it." The next hour passed in tense anticipation as the Valcora carefully navigated toward the source of the energy readings. As they drew closer, the asteroid cluster came into view on the main screen, a collection of jagged, tumbling rocks orbiting a central mass that seemed to pulse with an inner light. "Magnify the central asteroid," Varela ordered. The image shifted, focusing on the largest body in the cluster. Its surface was covered in the same symbols they had seen on the first beacon, but these glowed with a flickering, unstable energy that made them appear to writhe across the rock surface. "It's damaged," the science officer realized, studying the readings. "The energy signature is erratic, like a system malfunctioning." "Or dying," Dale suggested quietly. Varela turned to her crew. "Prepare a shuttle. I want a closer look." "Commander," one of the officers protested, "we're still within the rift. Launching a shuttle in these conditions would be extremely hazardous." "Then we'll be extremely careful," Varela replied firmly. This may be our only chance to study a beacon in this state. The scientific value is worth the risk. Within minutes, a small team had been assembled. Varela Dale, the lead science officer, and 2 security personnel. As they boarded the shuttle, Dale noticed that Varela had brought with her the same command blade she had worn during their visit to the first beacon. Expecting trouble, he asked, nodding toward the weapon. Always, she replied simply, especially when dealing with damaged alien technology. The shuttle detached from the Valcora and began its careful approach to the central asteroid. Up close, the instability of the beacon was even more apparent. Energy discharges crackling across its surface, the symbols pulsing erratically like a failing heartbeat. "This doesn't feel right," Dale murmured as they prepared to land on a relatively stable section of the asteroid surface. The first beacon was so controlled. "This feels chaotic. Perhaps it was damaged in whatever cataclysm caused the Scylla rift in the first place," the science officer suggested. "These formations aren't natural. Something tore space apart here, long ago." The shuttle touched down with a gentle thud, its landing gear adjusting to the asteroid's minimal gravity. Through the viewport, they could see the symbols glowing more brightly in response to their arrival. "It knows we're here," Dale said. "It's responding to our presence." "Yes," the science officer agreed, "but without the precision we saw before. It's like comparing a scream to a whisper." Varela stood, checking her environment suit one last time. "We'll proceed with extreme caution. No one touches anything without explicit approval. Our goal is observation only." As they exited the shuttle and made their way across the asteroid's surface, the erratic energy pulses intensified. Walking was difficult, not just because of the low gravity, but because the very surface beneath their feet seemed to shift and ripple with each energy surge. "Over there," the science officer called, pointing to what appeared to be an entrance similar to the one they had found on the first beacon. That opening wasn't visible from orbit. They approached carefully, watching as the entrance expanded in response to their proximity. But unlike the smooth, controlled reaction of the first beacon, this movement was jerky, almost desperate. "It's trying to communicate," Dale realized. "But something's wrong. It's like it's in pain." "Structures don't feel pain," one of the security officers said dismissively. "These aren't just structures," Dale insisted. I don't know what they are exactly, but they're more than just buildings or technology." Inside, the beacon was a chaotic mirror of the first one they had explored. The same basic layout, the same types of chambers, but everything was distorted, damaged. Walls that should have been smooth were cracked and leaking energy. Symbols that should have formed coherent patterns were fragmented, interrupted. In what appeared to be the central chamber, they found the remains of a holographic interface similar to the one that had shown them the map of beacons. But this one flickered weakly, unable to form a stable image. "Can we stabilize it?" Varela asked the science officer, who was already scanning the interface with her equipment. "I'm trying," she replied, adjusting settings on her device. "But the systems are so degraded." "Wait, I'm getting something." The hologram solidified briefly, showing a familiar spiral wing symbol. But instead of the calm, controlled presentation they had seen before, this image pulsed frantically, the spiral spinning too fast, the wings beating like those of a trapped bird. "It's trying to warn us," Dale said suddenly, stepping toward the hologram. "Warning us about what?" Varela asked. Before Dale could answer, the hologram shifted, forming a crude image of what appeared to be a star with massive solar flares erupting from its surface. "That's the Valcora's current position relative to this cluster," the science officer realized, checking her scanner. "It's showing us." She was interrupted by a massive energy surge that rippled through the chamber, knocking them all off their feet. The hologram exploded in a burst of light, then reformed to show the same star, its flares now reaching toward a tiny representation of the Valcora. "It's not a warning," Varela said, her voice tight with sudden understanding. "It's happening now. The rift is experiencing a solar event that could damage or destroy the ship." The science officer confirmed her fears with a quick check of her equipment. Massive energy spike detected in the rift, heading directly for the Valcora's position. Impact in approximately 7 minutes. We need to get back to the ship, Varela ordered, already moving toward the exit. Now! As they raced back to the shuttle, the asteroid beneath their feet trembled with increasing violence. Energy discharges lashed out around them, narrowly missing their retreating forms. "It's trying to help us," Dale shouted over the growing chaos. "The beacon, it's using what power it has left to shield us from the worst of the energy storm." Whether that was true or simply Dale's imagination, they had no time to debate. They reached the shuttle and launched immediately, accelerating away from the asteroid cluster as energy surges began to engulf it. "Maximum speed back to the Valcora," Varela instructed the pilot, "and open a channel to the ship." When the connection was established, she spoke urgently. "This is Commander Varela. The Rift is experiencing a major energy storm. Prepare for immediate departure from our current position. Adjust shields to maximum protection against radiation and energy surges." The response was immediate and professional, despite the alarming news. By the time the shuttle docked with the Valcora, the great ship was already maneuvering away from the approaching energy wave, its engines straining against the Rift's chaotic currents. On the bridge, Varela took command, directing their escape with calm precision despite the danger. "Follow the route, mister." Kincaid plodded through the Rift. "Maximum sustainable speed." "The energy wave is gaining on us, Commander," the sensor officer reported. "Impact in 3 minutes." Dale studied the navigation console, then looked up. "There's a dense dust cloud 2 minutes ahead. If we can reach it before the wave hits, it might disperse some of the energy." "Plot the course," Varela ordered. "All power to engines and aft shields." The Valcora surged forward, straining against the limits of its design. On the view screen, they could see the approaching energy wave, a wall of crackling, multicolored power that consumed everything in its path. 1 minute to dust cloud, the navigator announced. 2 minutes to impact. "We're not going to make it," one of the officers said quietly. "We'll make it," Varela countered firmly. "This ship has survived worse." As they raced toward the dubious shelter of the dust cloud, Dale moved to stand beside Varela on the command platform. "For what it's worth," he said softly, "I'm sorry I got you into this mess." She gave him a sidelong glance. "I believe I am the one who decided to investigate the asteroid cluster." "Yes, but if I hadn't been picked up by your ship in the first place, then we would never have discovered the beacons," she finished for him. "And that would have been a far greater loss than one ship and its crew." The navigator's voice interrupted their exchange. "Entering dust cloud now. Energy wave impact in 30 seconds. All hands brace for impact," Varela announced over the ship-wide comm. "Secure all stations." The Valcora plunged into the dust cloud, visibility dropping to 0 as the ship was enveloped in swirling particles. Behind them, the energy wave hit the edge of the cloud and began to transform, its power partially absorbed and dispersed by the dense material. When it finally reached the Valcora, the wave had lost much of its destructive force. Still, the impact was enough to send the ship lurching violently to one side, throwing crew members against bulkheads and consoles. Emergency lighting flashed on as main power fluctuated. "Damage report," Varela called as soon as the initial shock had passed. "Minor hull breaches on decks 7 and 10. An officer responded, checking his console. "Automated seals holding. Engine output at 73% and stabilizing. No casualties reported." A collective sigh of relief passed through the bridge. They had survived. As the Valcora limped through the remainder of the dust cloud, Dale found himself reflecting on what they had witnessed on the damaged beacon. "It saved us," he said to Varela. "That beacon, it was dying, maybe it's been dying for thousands of years, but it used its last energy to warn us." "We don't know that for certain," she replied, though her tone suggested she might agree with him. "But it does raise questions about the nature of these structures, about how much awareness they might possess. If they're aware enough to recognize danger and try to protect others." Dale let the implication hang in the air between them. Then perhaps they are more than mere technology, Varela finished. Perhaps they are, in some sense we don't yet understand, alive. The thought accompanied them as the Valkyra emerged from the dust cloud and continued its journey through the rift, battered but unbroken, toward the coordinates of the second intact beacon, and whatever revelations awaited them there. After emerging from the Scylla rift, the Valkyra underwent emergency repairs while maintaining course toward the coordinates of the second beacon. Engineering teams worked tirelessly, sealing hull breaches and restoring power systems. Despite the damage, the ship's core functions remained operational, a testament to Akari engineering and the crew's efficiency. Varela had called a meeting of the senior staff in the ship's conference room to discuss their findings from the damaged beacon and plan their approach to the next intact one. As the officers assembled, Dale noticed a subtle change in their demeanor toward him. Where before there had been suspicion and resentment, now there was a cautious acceptance, perhaps even respect. "We've analyzed the data collected from the damaged beacon," the science officer began, displaying holographic representations of their findings. "Despite its deteriorated state, we were able to extract significant information, such as," Varela prompted. "The beacons appear to be not just communication devices, but repositories of knowledge, libraries, if you will. Each one contains different information, meant to be accessed sequentially. Like chapters in a book," Dale suggested. "Precisely," the science officer agreed. "The damaged beacon was attempting to transmit its data to us, but most was corrupted. However, we did recover this." She activated another hologram, a three-dimensional representation of what appeared to be a DNA strand, but with unusual modifications to its structure. "This isn't standard human DNA," Dale observed, studying the image. "No," the science officer confirmed. "It contains sequences that don't match any known species, but it does share approximately 85% commonality with human genetic structure, specifically with your genetic structure, Mr. Kincaid." All eyes turned to Dale, who looked as surprised as everyone else. "Mine specifically? Not just generic human DNA. Yours specifically." The beacon performed a detailed scan when you approached it, just as the first one did. It was comparing your genetic code to something in its database. Varela stepped closer to the hologram, her expression intense. "What does this mean? That Mr. Kincaid is somehow related to the precursors?" "Not exactly," the science officer said carefully, "but it suggests that the precursors may have interacted with human genetics at some point in the distant past, perhaps even modified them in some way." A heavy silence fell over the room as the implications of this statement sank in. "So I'm what? Some kind of precursor science experiment?" Dale finally asked, his usual humor absent. "More likely a descendant of someone who was," the science officer clarified. "The modifications would have been made tens of thousands of years ago, then passed down through countless generations, becoming diluted with each passing millennium. But still present enough for the beacons to recognize," Varela noted. "And apparently, these modifications are rare or Mr. Kincaid would not be so special to the beacon systems." Dale ran a hand through his hair, visibly processing this information. "So that's why the first beacon responded to me. Why it activated when I approached it. And likely why you felt that pull you described," the science officer added. "The beacons may be designed to attract those carrying these specific genetic markers." "Which brings us to our next question," Varela said, redirecting the conversation. "What will we find at the second beacon? And what will it reveal about Mr. Kincaid's connection to all of this?" "We'll know soon enough," the navigator interjected. "We're approaching the coordinates now. Estimated arrival in 17 minutes. Varela nodded. "Prepare an expedition team. Same composition as before, but with additional scientific personnel. We need to document everything this time, in case we're forced to leave quickly." As the meeting adjourned and the officers dispersed to their stations, Dale remained behind, still staring at the holographic DNA strand that was apparently partly his own. Varela hesitated, then approached him. "Are you concerned about what we might discover?" "Wouldn't you be?" Dale asked, looking up at her. Finding out you might be carrying alien DNA isn't exactly an everyday occurrence. No, she agreed, but explains much about your unconventional qualities. Dale managed a small smile at that. Are you saying I'm weird, Commander? I am saying you are unique, she corrected. And perhaps that uniqueness has purpose beyond what either of us understood. Before Dale could respond, the navigator's voice came over the comm system. Commander, we've reached the coordinates. The beacon is in visual range. Varela turned toward the door. Coming to the bridge. Mr. Kincaid, I believe your presence will be required as well. The second beacon was strikingly different from the first. Where the original structure had been sleek and elegant in its alienness, this one was massive and imposing. A great sphere hanging in space, its surface covered in the now familiar spiral wing symbols, but arranged in different, more complex patterns. It's at least 3 times the size of the first beacon, the science officer reported as the Valcora approached cautiously. And the energy signature is significantly stronger. Life signs? Varela asked. None detected. Same as before. Dale studied the beacon on the view screen, feeling that now familiar pull, stronger this time, almost uncomfortably so. It's calling me, he said quietly, more insistently than the first one did. Varela glanced at him. In what way? It's hard to explain, like a voice just below the threshold of hearing. Urgent, but not threatening. The science officer's console chimed. Commander, the beacon is transmitting a signal directly to us. It appears to be instructions. Put on screen, Varela ordered. The main view screen shifted to display a series of symbols flowing in complex patterns. Most were variations of the spiral wing, but arranged in sequences that suggested meaning beyond simple decoration. Can we translate this? Varela asked. Working on it, the science officer replied, her fingers moving rapidly over her console. We've made some progress on deciphering the basic syntax from our first encounter, but this is more complex. However, I believe these particular symbols here, she highlighted a recurring pattern, indicate a specific entry point on the beacon's surface. Varela studied the pattern, then made her decision. Prepare the shuttle. We'll approach at the coordinates indicated by the signal. Within the hour, the expedition team was aboard the shuttle, approaching the massive sphere. Up close, its surface revealed intricate details invisible from a distance. Layers of symbols that seemed to shift and flow like liquid, despite being etched into what appeared to be solid material. The entry point should be just ahead, the pilot announced, maneuvering the shuttle around the curve of the sphere. As they approached the designated area, a section of the sphere's surface began to reconfigure itself, symbols sliding apart to create an opening similar to what they had seen on the first beacon, but significantly larger. Looks like we're expected, Dale commented, feeling the pull stronger than ever now. The shuttle passed through the opening, which sealed itself behind them once they were inside. The interior chamber was vast, large enough to accommodate a vessel many times the size of their shuttle. Like the first beacon, the walls emitted a soft, ambient light, but the color here was a deep amber rather than blue. The atmosphere is breathable, the science officer announced after checking her instruments. Temperature and gravity within standard parameters. Then we proceed on foot, Varela decided. Standard formation. Remember, observation is our priority. As they exited the shuttle, Dale felt the deck beneath his feet vibrate subtly, as if in recognition of his presence. The sensation traveled up through his body, settling as a strange warmth in his chest. It knows we're here, he said quietly. It knows I'm here. The interior of the beacon was organized in concentric rings, each leading deeper toward the center. Unlike the first beacon, which had required them to search for clues about its purpose, this one seemed eager to guide them. Pathways illuminated as they approached, doorways opening before they reached them. It's cooperating, one of the scientists observed. Almost like it's been waiting for us. Not for us, Varela corrected, glancing at Dale. For him. They progressed through several chambers, each more elaborate than the last, with walls covered in increasingly complex symbol patterns. In some rooms, holographic displays activated automatically, showing star maps, DNA sequences, and other data too complex to immediately comprehend. The science team worked frantically to record everything, aware that they might not have time for a thorough study later. Varela allowed them brief pauses for documentation, but kept the group moving steadily toward the center of the structure. "Commander," Dale said during one such pause, "I think I understand now." The first beacon was an introduction, a primer to establish contact. This is where the real information is stored." "What kind of information?" she asked. "I don't know yet, but it feels comprehensive, like a history, maybe, or an explanation." As they approached what appeared to be the central chamber, they encountered their first obstacle, a sealed doorway with no obvious mechanism for opening it. Embedded in the center of the door was a handprint-like depression, surrounded by spiral wing symbols. "It wants confirmation," Dale said with certainty, stepping forward. "Wait," Varela cautioned, placing a hand on his arm. "We don't know what will happen if you interact directly with the beacon systems." Dale met her gaze. "That's exactly why we're here, isn't it? To find out." After a moment's hesitation, she nodded and released his arm. Dale stepped forward and placed his hand in the depression. Immediately, light coursed through the symbols surrounding his hand, spreading outward across the door in pulsing waves. The door dissolved, revealing a spherical chamber at the very heart of the beacon. In the center floated what appeared to be a crystalline structure, a complex, multifaceted object that rotated slowly, emitting a soft golden light. The core, the science officer breathed, her instruments frantically recording data. It's like nothing we've ever seen before. The energy readings are off the scale, but completely stable. Dale felt drawn to the core, the pull now nearly irresistible. He took a step forward, then another, barely aware of Varela calling his name with increasing concern. When he was within arm's reach of the crystalline structure, it stopped rotating and shifted its configuration, facets rearranging themselves into a new pattern. A beam of light shot out, striking Dale squarely in the chest. He gasped, not in pain, but in surprise, as information flooded into his mind. Images, concepts, understanding. The security officers raised their weapons instinctively, but Varela ordered them to hold fire. "He's not in danger," she said, though she couldn't have explained how she knew this. After what seemed like minutes, but was likely only seconds, the beam of light withdrew. Dale staggered slightly, steadying himself with effort. When he turned to face the others, his expression was transformed, filled with wonder and a new awareness. "I understand now," he said softly. "I know what the beacons are for." "Tell us," Varela urged, stepping closer. "They're a library, the complete history and knowledge of the precursors. But more than that, they're a safeguard." Dale struggled to find the right words. The precursors didn't just disappear. They evolved, transcended their physical forms. "Into what?" the science officer asked. "Into something beyond our comprehension." But before they left, they created the beacons as a legacy, a way to guide the younger species that would come after them, to help us avoid their mistakes. "Mistakes," Varela echoed. Dale nodded. "They nearly destroyed themselves through conflict. Species against species, faction against faction. Sound familiar? They reached a point of technological advancement where their weapons could annihilate entire solar systems. And they came right to the edge of using them. "What stopped them?" one of the security officers asked, drawn in despite their professional detachment. "They discovered something, a unifying principle that transcended their differences. Not just a scientific breakthrough, but a philosophical one." Dale touched his temple, as if still processing the information. "The beacons contain that knowledge, but they're designed to only reveal it to species ready to receive it. And they determine this readiness how?" Varela asked. "Through witnesses, individuals with specific genetic markers, descendants of those the precursors had selected and modified long ago to be compatible with their technology." Dale looked down at his hands, as if seeing them for the first time. "People like me." You're saying the precursors chose certain individuals from various species to serve as future keys to their knowledge, the science officer clarified. Not just keys, Dale corrected. Interpreters. Bridges between their understanding and ours. Varela processed this information with her typical analytical thoroughness. And what does this knowledge reveal? How to transcend physical form. How to build weapons capable of destroying solar systems. Dale shook his head. That's the thing. It's not about power or weapons at all. The core of their discovery was that advancement through domination is a dead end. True progress comes through cooperation, through the synthesis of diverse perspectives. He gestured to the beacon around them. That's why this place responded to both of us together, a human and an Akari working in concert. It's what the precursors hoped would eventually happen among the younger species. This is why Olivan must not gain control of the beacons, Varela realized. He would see only the potential for weapons, for dominance. And that would trigger the beacon's fail-safe protocols, Dale confirmed. They're designed to self-destruct if accessed with harmful intent. The knowledge they contain would be lost forever. A heavy silence fell over the group as the implications of this revelation sank in. Finally, the science officer spoke up. Commander, we're detecting a transmission from the Valcora. 3 Dominion warships have entered the system and are on an intercept course. Varela's expression hardened. Olivan's forces. How long until they reach us? Approximately 40 minutes at their current speed. Dale looked at the crystalline core, still pulsing with its golden light. We need more time. The beacon has barely begun to share its knowledge. There's so much more to learn. Varela made her decision quickly. Download as much data as you can the next 30 minutes. Then we return to the Valcora and prepare to defend ourselves if necessary. As the science team rushed to connect their equipment to the beacon's systems, Varela drew Dale aside. Is there anything specific we should be looking for? Any priority information that could help us convince the Dominion to change their approach? Dale considered this. The beacon organized its knowledge in layers. The most immediately relevant information should be in what it calls the convergence protocols, guidelines for how diverse species can collaborate despite different biological imperatives and cultural backgrounds. Focus on those, Varela instructed her team, and anything related to the location of the remaining beacons. The next half hour passed in a blur of activity. The beacon seemed to understand their urgency, accelerating its data transmission to their equipment. Dale remained near the core, occasionally reaching out to touch it when the data flow faltered, somehow facilitating the connection through his presence. When their time was nearly up, Varela gave the order to prepare for departure. As the team packed up their equipment, Dale lingered, his hands still on the crystalline structure. We'll come back, he promised quietly, once we've dealt with Olivan. The core pulsed once, brightly, as if in understanding. Then, to everyone's surprise, a small fragment detached itself from the main structure and floated toward Dale. It hovered before him momentarily before settling into his outstretched palm, where it seemed to melt into his skin, leaving a faint spiral wing pattern that glowed briefly before fading from view. What just happened? Varela demanded, moving quickly to his side. Dale stared at his palm, equally surprised. I think it gave me a key, or a piece of itself, something to help us find and access the next beacon. Commander, the communication officer interrupted urgently. Message from the Valcora. The Dominion ships have accelerated. New estimated arrival, 12 minutes. We need to move. Now, Varela ordered. They hurried back through the beacon's chambers, which now seemed to be reconfiguring themselves to expedite their exit. When they reached the shuttle bay, they found the craft powered up and ready for launch, though no one had activated its systems. The beacon is helping us, Dale explained as they boarded quickly. It understands the threat. The shuttle launched automatically, carrying them out through the opening in the beacon's surface, which sealed itself behind them once they were clear. As they approached the Valcora, they could see the ship already in battle readiness, its weapon systems powered and shields at maximum. Shuttle to Valcora, Varela transmitted. Expedite docking procedures. Prepare for immediate departure as soon as we're aboard. Acknowledged, Commander, came the response. Be advised that the Dominion vessels are hailing us, demanding our immediate surrender. Ignore them for now, Varela instructed. Focus on getting us aboard and ready to move. The shuttle docked with practiced efficiency, and the expedition team rushed to their stations. On the bridge, Varela took command, quickly assessing their situation on the tactical displays. The Dominion ships will intercept us in 7 minutes, the tactical officer reported. They've launched fighters to encircle our position. Options, Varela demanded. We can't outrun 3 warships, Commander. Our engines are still not at full capacity after the rift. And even at peak performance, the Valkyra isn't designed to outpace military interceptors. Dale studied the tactical display, then pointed to a region of space near the beacon. There, the beacon's energy field extends further than it appears. If we position ourselves here, it might interfere with their targeting systems. And if it doesn't, the tactical officer challenged. Then we'll be at the same disadvantage we are now, Varela replied, making her decision. Helm, move us into position alongside the beacon. Tactical, power weapons, but do not target. I want defensive capabilities only. As the Valkyra maneuvered into position, the communication officer reported, They're hailing us again, Commander. It's High Emissary Olivan himself. Varela squared her shoulders. Put him through. Olivan's face appeared on the main view screen, his expression a mixture of fury and triumph. Commander Varela, your reckless adventure ends here. Power down your systems and prepare to be boarded. With respect, Emissary, we are in the middle of a scientific discovery of unprecedented importance, Varela replied coolly. The beacons contain knowledge that could transform our understanding of the universe, of our very origins. The beacons are Dominion property, Olivan snapped. Any knowledge they contain will be analyzed by proper authorities, not by a renegade commander and a human prisoner. Dale stepped forward into view of the transmission. The beacons don't belong to anyone, Emissary. They're a legacy meant for all species willing to work together. Olivan's eyes narrowed at the sight of Dale. So the human speaks for you now, Varela. How far you have fallen. He speaks from direct knowledge, Varela countered. The beacons have communicated with him, shared information that... Enough, Olivan interrupted. I will not debate with traitors. You have 5 minutes to power down and prepare for boarding, or we will open fire. The transmission cut off abruptly. He's not bluffing, the tactical officer warned. Their weapons are powering up. Varela turned to Dale. Any ideas? Dale looked at his palm, where the fragment from the beacon had merged with his skin. The pattern was invisible now, but he could still feel its presence, a warm pulse synchronized with his heartbeat. Maybe, he said slowly, but it's a risk. At this point, I'm open to risks, Varela replied. Dale approached the navigation console. May I? The navigator looked to Varela, who nodded her permission. Dale placed his palm on the console, closing his eyes in concentration. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, the spiral wing pattern reappeared on his skin, glowing with increasing brightness. Energy surged from his hand into the ship's systems. On every display, the spiral wing symbol appeared briefly before being replaced by new information, coordinates, navigation paths, energy configurations. What's happening? Varela demanded. The beacon fragment, the science officer realized, checking her scanner. It's interfacing with our systems, reconfiguring them somehow. New energy signature detected. The tactical officer reported with alarm. It's building around the ship's hull. I can't identify the pattern, but it's growing stronger. Outside the Valkyra, a field of golden energy began to form, encasing the ship in a cocoon of light that pulsed with the same rhythm as the pattern on Dale's hand. 3 minutes to intercept, the tactical officer announced. The Dominion ships are preparing to fire. Dale's eyes snapped open. It's ready. The beacon has given us a way out. Explain, Varela demanded. Not a weapon, Dale said quickly. A gateway. A passage to the coordinates of the next beacon, using the precursor's method of travel. Is it safe? Dale managed a small, wry smile. Probably safer than facing 3 warships with orders to capture or destroy us. Varela made her decision. How do we activate it? We already have, Dale replied as the energy field around the ship intensified. It just needs a command to finalize the process. Dominion ships firing, the tactical officer shouted. Now would be good, Varela said calmly. Dale placed his palm back on the console, the spiral wing blazing brightly. Take us to the next beacon, he said clearly. The energy field collapsed inward, enveloping the Valcora completely. For a heartbeat, the ship seemed to exist between dimensions, neither fully in normal space nor completely elsewhere. Then, with a flash of golden light, the Valcora vanished from the system, milliseconds, before the Dominion weapons could reach it. In the darkness between stars, the journey took both an instant and an eternity. The crew experienced a moment of disorientation, a sensation of being stretched and compressed simultaneously, before reality reasserted itself around them. When the view screens cleared, they showed an unfamiliar star system. A yellow sun burned at its center, with several planets orbiting at various distances. And ahead of them, floating in space, was another beacon. This one different again from the previous two, its form resembling a vast, intricate snowflake. Status report, Varela called, her voice steady despite the unprecedented method of travel they had just experienced. All systems functional, the operations officer reported with surprise. Power levels stable. No damage detected. Where are we? Varela asked, turning to the navigation officer. The young Akari worked her console with growing confusion. I can't pinpoint our location, Commander. None of the stellar configurations match our charts. According to our navigation system, we're outside the known galaxy. A stunned silence fell over the bridge. Dale stared at the view screen, at the elegant form of the third beacon waiting for them. Not outside, he said softly. Beyond. The precursors didn't want their most important knowledge to be found accidentally. This beacon is hidden where no conventional ship would ever travel. Varela studied the strange star system surrounding them. How do we get back? The same way we came, Dale replied, holding up his hand where the spiral wing pattern was now permanently visible, a subtle iridescence under his skin. When we're ready, Varela nodded, processing this new development with remarkable composure. Then we should make the most of our time here. Prepare an expedition team. Let's see what this beacon has to teach us. As preparations began for their exploration of the third beacon, Dale stood at the view screen, gazing at the snowflake-like structure that held the next chapter of the Precursor's legacy. The journey had taken them far beyond the reach of the Dominion, beyond the conflicts and politics of the known galaxy. Here, in this hidden corner of the universe, perhaps they would find the answers they sought, not just about the Precursors and their knowledge, but about humanity's place in the cosmos, about the potential for true cooperation among diverse species, about the future that awaited them all if they could learn to rise above dominance and submission. Kneel, human, Varela had commanded when they first met. Now they stood side by side, Akari and human, equals in discovery, united by curiosity rather than hierarchy. It had been just the beginning, as Dale had somehow known it would be. The real journey, the one that would transform not just them but potentially all intelligent species, was only now truly starting. And somewhere in the depths of space, in hidden corners of the galaxy, other beacons waited, their ancient knowledge preserved for those worthy to receive it, their light a beacon in more ways than one, guiding the younger races toward a future the Precursors had envisioned 50,000 years ago. A future where no species knelt before another, but where all stood together, facing the universe not as conquerors, but as explorers, seekers, and ultimately, inheritors of a legacy beyond imagination.